Really glad to be here with all of you today. Super excited to speak and learn from you guys as well. Maybe we can have a bit of a discussion afterwards. Today I'll be talking about whether or not NFTs, or VCs rather, spell the end of NFTs as identity. And by VCs, I mean verifiable credentials. I don't mean venture capitalists. If you are one, don't worry, your job is safe. You can be in this room. This will hopefully be some interesting information for you. But before we begin, what is identity? And I'm going to start that off by explaining to you who I am. So, this is me. I am Apurva Chitnis. I am made up of multitudes. I am a member of a company. I have a role there. I have some skills. I can perform a handstand. I am members of groups, including a DAO. I have relations to other people. And all of these things I can prove to you using an ID, using my employment forms, by you looking at my public profile on Twitter. You can ask my parents, and so on. There's all these different ways of you verifying who I am. But let's turn over the question to you. Who are you? Here's a few dimensions to think about. What memberships or groups do you have? What activities have you performed, both in the past and right now? For example, what kind of courses have you done? What things have you done at university? What relationships do you have in your life? And finally, can you prove this to me? Can you prove your memberships, your activities, your identity to me? And that's where an identity system comes in. And non-transferable NFTs and verifiable credentials are just examples of these identity systems. We're going to talk about each of them, but hopefully I'll explain what these systems do and what their role is. So let's dig into each. But before we do that, I'm going to talk a bit more about what kind of properties we need in an identity system. This is so we can evaluate how good each one is, how valuable each one is. So a few different properties here. I'm just going to highlight the key ones here. Number one, an identity system should be impersonation resistant. That means a statement made about you by somebody else shouldn't be moldable to be a statement about somebody else entirely, about some other thing. It should be safe. It should be hard to forge. That neatly links to number two. It should be verifiable and validatable. Anybody should be able to validate a statement. And luckily, we have cryptography. We can use public key cryptography for this. It makes it super easy for us. Number three, and this is key, is sometimes missed in the whole world of NFTs. It should be cheap, both computationally and kind of in money terms, but also easy to use. It's a really important point here. There should be great tooling around something that's quite technical and quite deep. So that's like one big takeaway. Right now, all these terms, NFTs, non-transferable NFTs, VCs, they're all quite technical. We need to go above one layer of abstraction. Number four, this should be privacy preserving. And by that, what I mean is that if I give you some kind of identity, for example, if I give you a driving license, I shouldn't be informed every time you use that driving license to do some act in the real world. You shouldn't be calling home every time you use a part of that ID. It should be privacy preserving. So you, as a holder of it, should retain the kind of analytics around that. It should be up to you to kind of share that with anybody else if you wish to. And number five, it should be cross-platform. This is also really important and often missed. It should work on mobile, it should work on web, it should work on desktop, it should work on blockchain, it should work wherever our computational universe takes us. That's like another key property. So these are properties of identity systems. I'm now going to go on into verifiable credentials and non-transferable NFTs. So what is a verifiable credential? So it's super simple. Hands up here, who knows what a verifiable credential is? Anybody in the room? One person?
Yeah.
Kinda.
Don't ask me to define it out loud, but
okay.
I'm familiar.
Okay, so a little bit, 50%. Everybody else is new to this. That's cool. I used to be new to it. We're all learning. A verifiable credential is super simple. It's basically an off-chain JSON document. It stores a few key properties. It's basically an attestation of some belief. For example, it could be a university saying, Apu, you have this degree. That could be the belief it encodes. It's self-disclosed and stored off-chain. So I will store it locally on my hard drive or on my mobile phone in some local storage, but it's not stored on the blockchain. And it's self-disclosed. By what I mean by that is that I need to give it to somebody for somebody to know about that identity existing. It's not publicly disclosed. It's not viewable by anybody in the world. We will go on into NFTs in a second, how they're different. But they're self-disclosed. That's really important. Number three is a really important point here. They're an open standard. There's a W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium standard for verifiable credentials, and you can see that URL at the bottom. If you dig into that, you'll learn a bit more about them. And it's a standardized document, structure, there's loads of applications built around it. So the whole ecosystem is now developing because it's a standard that's agreed on by many people. And finally, it employs crypto primitives, public key cryptography, signatures, and so on. Those are used for the properties in the previous slide around security and validatability and verifiability. So those are verifiable credentials, super simple, stored off-chain. They basically are an attestation of some belief. Now, what's a soul-bound NFT, also known as a non-transferable NFT? So if you come across those two terms, they're actually equivalent. A soul-bound NFT is simply an NFT that is sent just to you. It's non-transferable. It's just only allocated to you. It's stored on-chain, and it's publicly visible. That means anybody can see that non-transferable NFT has been sent to you. Luckily, you can use cryptography to hide some details. So with cryptography and ZK snarks, you can hide the sender, you can hide the recipient, you can hide the contents of that NFT as well. Those are all a bit more complicated, but those are some really great properties about non-transferable NFTs. They're actually quite powerful. So even though they are public by default, you can use encryption to hide details of them. But finally, number 5, this is kind of an important point. There's no widely accepted standard here. Different people implement them in different ways. And if you're interested to learn more about soul-bound NFTs, you can dig into the Vitalik blog at the bottom. He talks a bit more about them. So what are the differences? 2 really simple differences. I'll just briefly mention those. 1, the payment model is a bit different. So for soul-bound NFTs, you pay for gas. Verifiable credentials, you pay for storage because they're stored somewhere. A public and private, so soul-bound NFTs are public by default. You can use encryption to hide them. Verifiable credentials are private by default. You have to share them. They're self-disclosed. Those are the kind of minor differences. I really want to highlight the 2 underlined ones here. There's 2 major differences. Number 1 is standardization. So soul-bound NFTs are not standardized, as far as I'm aware. Verifiable credentials are standardized. The second one, which is really important, is non-hideable identity. So now, this is a bit of a complicated topic, so I just want to explain this, and hopefully I'll get a few nods from the audience. So non-hideable identity is basically part of your identity that you can't hide from somebody else. Why is that important? So let's say I go to a bank. I get a loan from that bank. If they give me a non-transferable NFT, any other bank in the world can see that one bank has given me a loan. I can't hide it. I can't shield it from any other bank, so that's publicly available. If they gave me a verifiable credential, then since verifiable credentials are self-disclosed, I could hide that. And since that's quite an important part of my identity, it kind of makes sense for it to be non-hideable. So I think that's a really crucial topic, and people should think about that when they're thinking about using NFTs versus verifiable credentials to kind of form identity online. So I just want to take a pause there. Those are the kind of differences. As you can see, a lot of similarities. Differences, few minor ones, 1 or 2 big ones. Let's compare the 2 and try and answer the question I posed at the beginning. So do VCs, not venture capitalists, verifiable credentials, do they spell the end of soul-bound NFTs? Answer is no. There's 2 different solutions. The right choice really depends on each application, how you use them. And they're not incompatible. Some applications will want one, some will want the other. A lot of applications could use either, and you just need to decide which one works for you. If you need to have non-hideable identity, well, you probably need to use non-transferable NFTs. If you don't need that, and you really want things to be secure and offline, then maybe use a verifiable credential. That can also work. And just to keep things spicy and interesting, a few predictions for the future. So 2 predictions, let's see if they come out true. Number 1, I think standards will be developed for each kind of slice or application of identity online. For example, for group membership, there'll eventually be a standard. For activities you've done, they'll eventually be a standard. Right now, things are kind of done ad hoc. There's loads of different companies and organizations working in this space, doing things differently. So, there's lots of different standards. But that kind of leads on to the next point. Community adoption will guide the winner in each application. I think there's really strong network effects for each vertical here. And the more people that do one, leads to more incentive for people to join that specific standard and to join that way of doing things. So if VCs work in one particular way, and everybody uses them for example, identifying who they are for their driving license, that will probably be the standard ongoing. If consumers use them, if car providers use them, if, I don't know, lots of organizations use them, they eventually become the standard and kind of form the glue of society. So that's about it. I'm going to wrap up there and just thank everybody for their time. Thank you so much.
Well, if you will, we have a few minutes.
Oh,
if
yeah.
you would sit down and,
sure.
Because one of the things that you mentioned was about standards.
Mhm.
So how do we get from here to there? You know.
Yeah, so verified credentials have a pretty clean standard. I'm guessing you're asking about the NFT side.
Yeah.
So verified credentials have a standard. They took a few years to develop. They're slowly working in production, and it's like a whole process to get to that point.
And when you said who was the standard setting body?
The W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, they set the standard, and a bunch of different teams were involved in the creation of that standard. I think Consensus and a few others. For NFTs, I think that's really based on application and application developers. There needs to be like some kind of community cohesion around creating this kind of standard. Maybe it's an EIP, perhaps. But I think there needs to be some kind of drive from developers to define what that standard is. I think really the use cases for non-transferable NFTs are so broad. There needs to be a lot of discussion around how they should be used, how they should be positioned, and that those discussions need to happen. So I don't think it can happen with just one participant. I think there needs to be multiple participants come together, thinking about trade-offs, thinking about the schema, and using that to define the standard.
Does it help maybe to have some kind of outside party like, you know, you know, you said the worldwide that set the other one, like I know the IEEE, I know, you know, they're spending a lot of time in the blockchain area.
Honestly, this is a great question. I think this is like a human question more than a technology question. Like, how should you humans organize? How should they make decisions? I don't know. I think I think that would be great if some body comes together. The W3C does loads of great work around web technologies, not just for verifiable credentials, but for loads of different protocols that are used online. They could also do something similar for non-transferable NFTs, but a lot of the whole world around blockchains about things being decentralized and taking things away from big established bodies and making it more kind of open for anybody to contribute their opinions and ideas. So I'm sure there's another way to do this. I don't know what the right choice is myself.
But in my view, it all starts. The base layer is identity, right? Until we are able to somehow identify ourselves in some kind of decentralized manner, then how can we be in a decentralized world? And are you saying anything that where people are making significant progress?
They are. I think KYC DAO is one which I've come across. They basically send you a non-transferable NFT that basically verifies some information about you, and that can be used by loads of different financial providers to give you financial services. But that kind of single token that's given to you, that's basically soul-bound to you. It verifies that you have certain properties that financial providers care about. That's great. There's the...
Is that? I mean, I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Is that getting adopted?
I believe so. There's a few others actually. I had a whole list. None. I think this is really important. None of them are actually kicking off and making a huge amount of progress. The same is true for verifiable credentials. Everything is such in a nascent phase right now. I think it's early days. So I think community adoption will guide the winner. I think there's massive network effects here. Whoever gets the most number of users, the most kind of widely adopted standard will eventually win.
Yeah, but it's kind of funny, right? So when you said, the first people who kind of scale, who actually need standards.
Yeah.
And so, and then that sounds kind of random, though, the standards that we end up with if that's how it's done.
Yeah, it's normally done back to front. Normally, there's kind of an element of get product market fit, grow and scale, and eventually at some size, there becomes kind of some kind of friction, and people say, okay, we need a standard, we need to be interoperable, and that's kind of the driver for a standard to happen.
Just getting a little bit more broad, is this your first NFT.NYC?
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
And what do you think?
It's fantastic. It's great. It's like so much great energy. I work in a small startup, Kudos Labs. It's great.
Where did you come in from?
I work in New York. Came from Greenpoint actually, so not too far.
And it wasn't even worth it to come before?
I'm a new participant to this whole world of Web3.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yeah.
It's it is definitely a different crowd here. That is, and most people are very excited to be here, and that creates we're not just here because oh my god, another conference I got to go to.
Yeah, I think a lot of my life on Web3 is spent with 5 people who I work with. And the rest of it is spent on Twitter or on Farcaster, and so a lot of it is is online. And there's actual real people out there interested in Web3. They're real. They're not just JPEGs and avatars. They're real identities.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure in real life it's not going away. But it's going to be interesting how crypto becomes more integrated into the, in real life at the same time as in real life gets more integrated into the metaverse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super exciting. I think we're such at an early stage there, particularly around identity. There's so many interesting things happening in the European Union around identity as well, around, I think, different passports being able to accept DIDs, which are decentralized identifiers, which are like a key underlying layer used in verifiable credentials. I think decentralized identity is really kind of being used by governments and being thought about right now. And I think that's all coming to society. It's all going offline, or rather in real life. And it's super exciting.
Yeah, I actually just came back from Paris Blockchain Week.
Oh, yeah?
And what's super exciting about that is that it's, and I go all over the world, it's the only one, it's the first one, only one, where the local community, the leading companies are not only present, but they're also actually engaged, deeply engaged, innovating, LVMH. I mean, what they're doing with NFTs is crazy. And I don't see any American companies doing anything like that, or even yet in Asia.
Why do you think that is? Do you think there's like a cultural difference there?
I think they have a friendly regulatory environment. The government's actually gotten behind it. The Minister of Finance came and spoke at the conference. But also, their culture, their leading companies are brands that really lend themselves to NFTs, right? Fashion really lends itself if you open your mind. The organizations here that have tried to open, like the art, Sotheby's and such, but they can only do it if there's demand, I guess. And also, you go to Singapore. It was Token 2049 in October. It was crazy how much activity there's going on there relative to what's going on here in the U.S.
Right. Yeah. Well, I think culture, one thing, so I used to live in Europe. Culture is so, especially in New York, is such a vibrant thing. It's always confused me how NFTs aren't a bigger thing here. They are in other parts of the world, and it seems like there's been a lull recently with the whole crash and everything. But it does feel like America in general, particularly New York, is like a hotbed of culture. This is where culture develops, and it spreads to the rest of the world, but it starts here often.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's a lot to be said for that. For me, I joke, I have a word that I use to describe the tendency of markets to go from bubble to crash and bubble again. I call that capitalism. And that's really what it does. And it really, to me, seems almost like the sun going up and down. And you know what the sun going up and down, do you know what the signal in that is? No. There isn't any. It's just what it does. And so, just the fact that that the sun goes down, quite often when the sun goes down, people, when they can't see it clearly, people go, I guess it's not there. Yeah. When in fact, the fact that the sun goes down really didn't impact whether it's there or not. Yeah. It does impact people's ability to see it, though. Yeah. But if you have faith that it's there, and you stick around till the sun comes up, I think generally you should do okay. Yeah. I think it's actually sometimes a good thing for crashes to happen. It means that people can focus on the fundamentals, like identity. It's kind of boring. It's not really good in a hype cycle. Nobody really wants to work on it, but it's a great thing to work on. Yeah, look, I get that, but when people say, I really like this period, crypto winter, I'm saying, you should wait till the bubble. You're really going to like that. I was at Solana, a breakpoint in Lisbon, November of 20, like at the peak of the bubble. The world had never seen wealth creation at that scale before. Literally, the fastest company to 100 billion by 80%. They cut it down. That was a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, here's to many more. I'm sorry? Here's to many more. Yeah, and I think if you stick around, you wait, and it's a thing, and I'm pretty sure it's a thing. We'll get the next bubble. Yeah. Well, let's build it. Let's make it happen. Okay. Terrific. Sweet. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you.